Sarah sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the half-eaten slice of banana bread. The smell of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the faint aroma of lavender from the vase on the counter. She glanced at the clock on the wall. It was nearly 7:30. Her husband, Tom, would be late again. He had been working long hours for weeks now, and she often felt like a ghost in her own home, drifting through days filled with silence and solitude. Her heart ached with a familiar loneliness. Each evening stretched before her like an empty canvas, devoid of color or purpose. The chatter of her friends about their own marriages felt distant and foreign. They spoke of shared dinners and movie nights, while she found herself scrolling through social media, watching others' lives that seemed so vibrant compared to her own. She missed connection. She missed laughter that echoed in the walls of their suburban home. As she cleaned up after breakfast, a thought crossed her mind: why not go for a walk? The neighborhood was quiet at this hour, and perhaps some fresh air would clear her head. She slipped on her sneakers and grabbed her coat before stepping outside into the crisp morning air. The leaves rustled gently in the breeze as she walked down their tree-lined street toward a small park nearby. It was one of those perfect autumn mornings where sunlight filtered through branches, casting playful shadows on the ground. While wandering through the park, Sarah spotted Tom's driver, Alex, leaning against his car. He was scrolling through his phone but looked up as she approached. Their eyes met briefly, something unspoken hung in the air between them, a flicker of recognition perhaps? She felt an inexplicable warmth spread through her chest as he smiled and waved. "Morning," he called out cheerfully. "Hi," Sarah replied softly, feeling slightly embarrassed for interrupting him during his break. They exchanged pleasantries about the weather and how beautiful the park looked this time of year. As they spoke, Sarah felt an unexpected ease wash over her, an intimacy that had been missing from her life for far too long. Alex listened attentively as she talked about mundane things, how she had been trying to keep up with gardening or how their neighbor's cat had taken to lounging on their porch. "Do you want to take a ride?" Alex offered suddenly after a brief silence lingered between them. The suggestion caught Sarah off guard. It was innocent enough but felt charged with possibility. "Oh, I don't know," she stammered before glancing back toward home, the place that felt more like a prison than a sanctuary lately. "Just around the block," Alex added with an encouraging grin. "I promise I won't bite." With a nervous laugh escaping her lips, Sarah nodded slowly. "All right then." As they drove along familiar streets lined with quaint houses adorned with pumpkins for Halloween, Sarah found herself laughing at Alex's jokes about traffic and life as a driver in their suburban town. For those few minutes behind closed doors of his car, it felt like they were in their own little world, one where laughter replaced loneliness. When he parked back at the entrance to the park, they both sat silently for a moment before Sarah realized how much time had passed. She reluctantly opened her door to step out when Alex reached out gently to stop her. "Hey," he said softly, his voice low and inviting. "It's nice talking to you." A surge of emotion hit Sarah unexpectedly. It was more than just casual conversation, it was connection she hadn't realized she craved so deeply until that moment. "Thank you," she whispered back as their eyes locked once more. There was something magnetic about that gaze, something thrilling yet terrifying. Just then, raindrops began to fall from darkening clouds above them. A soft drizzle quickly turned into a steady downpour as they both laughed nervously about getting soaked without umbrellas. "Let's run," Alex suggested playfully as he jumped out into the rain without hesitation. Sarah followed suit despite herself. They darted toward cover under an overhanging tree where droplets splattered around them like tiny diamonds falling from above. The world around them faded away, the sound of rain drowning out everything else until it was just them in that moment. Suddenly he leaned closer, their faces inches apart amidst laughter and rain-soaked hair. Time seemed suspended as if nothing else mattered but this fleeting connection under stormy skies. Just then their lips brushed together softly, a gentle kiss filled with unspoken promises beneath cascading droplets, a kiss that ignited something within Sarah she thought long extinguished. But reality crashed back in an instant when thoughts of Tom flooded her mind, the man who would be coming home soon after another late night at work, unaware of what had just transpired between them. "I should go," Sarah said abruptly as panic set in like ice water coursing through her veins, but not before catching one last glimpse into Alex's eyes filled with understanding yet confusion too, before darting away into falling rain towards home where everything waited silently for its return to normalcy once again. As she entered through familiar doors leading back inside, the echoes of laughter fading away, her heart raced not only from running but from what lay ahead, now tangled within choices made amidst chaos outside, choices that could change everything forevermore if discovered by those who mattered most, especially Tom, who would soon find something amiss when he returned home later tonight. As I stepped inside, the warmth of the house enveloped me, but it felt foreign. The laughter of my children echoed from the living room, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Tom would be home soon, and I had to act as if nothing had changed, even though everything had. In the kitchen, I busied myself with dinner preparations. Chopping vegetables felt mechanical, each slice a reminder of my mundane routine. My mind drifted back to Alex and our stolen moments together. The thrill of our connection clashed violently with the guilt that gnawed at me. I could still feel his lips on mine. We kissed in a way that felt both wrong and exhilarating. "Mom, what's for dinner?" my daughter called from the living room, pulling me from my thoughts. "Just some pasta," I replied, forcing a smile. "Your favorite." I heard her footsteps retreating as she returned to her brother. Their laughter filled the house again, but it only amplified my sense of isolation. As I stirred the sauce simmering on the stove, guilt washed over me like a wave crashing against rocks. How could I betray Tom? Yet, my heart longed for something more than what we had. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter, an unknown number flashing across the screen. My stomach twisted as I picked it up to see Alex's name instead. He wanted to talk. A rush of excitement mixed with dread surged through me as I considered what this could mean. "Can't talk now," I texted back quickly, knowing it was a lie that would lead to more lies later. The clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed. Suddenly, Tom walked through the door with his usual charm, a briefcase in one hand and a smile on his face that seemed genuine yet distant all at once. "Hey there. Smells great," he said cheerfully as he placed his bag down. "Thanks," I replied, forcing enthusiasm into my voice while trying to gauge his mood. He kissed me lightly on the cheek before heading towards our kids. Watching him interact with them filled me with an ache I couldn't quite place, a blend of love and regret for what was slipping away between us. Dinner was served soon after. We sat around our worn dining table, sharing stories from our day while pretending nothing was amiss. The conversation flowed easily enough, school projects, work deadlines, but beneath it all lay an unspoken tension that made every word feel heavy. "Did you get my message earlier?" Tom asked casually between bites. "What message?" Panic gripped me momentarily before I regained composure. "I said I'd be home early tonight," he replied without looking up from his plate. I nodded slowly, relieved he hadn't mentioned anything about my erratic behavior or late nights recently. Yet deep down, a voice whispered that this facade couldn't last forever, especially not with Alex lingering in my thoughts like an unwelcome ghost. Later that evening, after putting the kids to bed, Tom and I settled into our usual spots on opposite ends of the couch. The television flickered softly in front of us as we flipped through channels aimlessly. Silence hung heavy between us like an uninvited guest refusing to leave. "What's going on with you lately?" Tom finally broke through the quietness after several minutes passed uneasily by. I hesitated before replying. How could I explain this turmoil without revealing too much? "Just tired, work has been busy," came out instead, safe but hollow words that barely scratched the surface of what weighed heavily upon me. He nodded slowly but didn't press further. Perhaps he sensed something deeper was at play, or maybe he just didn't care enough anymore to investigate further, a thought that stung more than it should have. Eventually retreating to bed alone felt like both relief and punishment all at once, as darkness enveloped me beneath sheets meant for two rather than one. I found myself staring at shadows cast by moonlight filtering through curtains instead of sleep coming easily tonight. My phone buzzed again beside me. Another message from Alex illuminated its screen in stark contrast against darkness surrounding everything else within these walls built upon memories long past, now feeling fragile under pressure mounting around us all too quickly. Sarah? Can we meet tomorrow? The weight of his words sent shivers down my spine, the thrill mingling again with fear as reality began crashing down upon me like waves against cliffs eroding slowly over time. I knew tomorrow would bring choices far beyond simple conversations or fleeting kisses. It would demand clarity amidst chaos threatening everything familiar about life lived until now. My heart raced as I stood in the kitchen, the smell of garlic and herbs filling the air. I was preparing dinner, but my mind was miles away. The unexpected call from my husband echoed in my ears. He wanted to come home early tonight. Panic surged through me as I chopped the vegetables, each slice a reminder of the tangled web I had woven. I glanced at my phone, hoping for a message from Alex. Instead, silence stared back at me. Guilt twisted in my stomach, tightening its grip with every passing minute. How could I juggle this secret while pretending everything was normal? My hands trembled slightly as I stirred the sauce simmering on the stove. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, sending my heart into a frenzy. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and approached cautiously. Opening it revealed Alex's familiar face, a mix of concern and excitement lighting up his features. "I thought you might need some company," he said softly. "Not now," I whispered urgently, glancing around to ensure no one else was listening. "My husband is coming home early." His expression shifted to one of understanding, but disappointment lingered in his eyes. "Can't we just talk for a minute?" I hesitated, torn between desire and obligation. "Okay, but just for a moment." We stepped into the living room where I could hear the distant sound of traffic outside, a reminder of life continuing on despite my internal storm. As we sat down, he leaned closer, his voice low. "You seem different today." "I'm just stressed," I replied, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. The tension hung thick between us as we exchanged glances that spoke volumes, words left unspoken lingered like ghosts in the air. Then came another knock at the door, this time more insistent. My heart dropped as I recognized my husband's voice calling out from the other side. "Sarah? Are you home?" I shot up from the couch, panic racing through me again. "I have to hide you." Alex nodded quickly and slipped into the hallway closet just as I opened the door with an effort to appear casual. My husband stepped inside with a briefcase in hand and an expectant look on his face. "Hey. You're home early," I said too cheerfully. "Yeah, things wrapped up sooner than expected." He placed his briefcase down and moved toward me with an embrace that felt both reassuring and suffocating all at once. While he spoke about his day, my mind raced back to Alex hidden just steps away from us, his presence both thrilling and dangerous. The conversation flowed around me like water through a sieve, nothing seemed to stick as anxiety clawed at my insides. "I thought we could have dinner together," he suggested casually after finishing his recounting of work events. "Sure. Just let me finish up here," I replied quickly before darting back into the kitchen to regain composure and check on Alex's silence behind closed doors. As I stirred the sauce again, thoughts whirled in my head like leaves caught in an autumn windstorm. What if he found out? What if Alex slipped out unnoticed? Would this charade ever end? Minutes passed like hours until finally dinner was served on our plates, a simple meal that felt heavy with unspoken truths between us both. Just then, Alex's phone buzzed from inside the closet, a sound so loud it pierced through our conversation like thunder rolling across an open field. "What was that?" my husband asked sharply. I don't know," I stammered clumsily while trying to mask my fear with forced nonchalance. He stood up abruptly and walked toward the closet door where Alex had been hiding moments before, my breath caught in my throat as dread filled every corner of my mind. "Let's see what that noise was," he said ominously as he reached for the doorknob. In that moment, time slowed down, every heartbeat echoed loudly against silence surrounding us both like an impending storm about to break loose upon unsuspecting shores. The door swung open revealing nothing but empty darkness inside, a cruel twist of fate allowing Alex's escape just moments before discovery could shatter everything around us into pieces beyond repair. "Nothing here," my husband remarked with confusion etched across his face while turning back toward me again, his eyes searching mine for answers unspoken yet lingering heavily within our shared space. But before I could respond or even catch my breath again, the phone buzzed once more. This time it vibrated against my own pocket where it lay hidden beneath layers of fabric shielding secrets too raw for daylight exposure. And then came another unexpected twist. It wasn't just any message, it was from Alex wanting to talk urgently about something important. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Alex's name glowed ominously, pulling me in. I hesitated, caught between the weight of guilt and the thrill of what might come next. My husband was still at work, but I could feel the walls closing in around me. I had to choose my words carefully. "Can we meet?" I typed back, my fingers trembling as I hit send. The response came almost immediately, "Yes. Now." A sense of urgency filled the air as I realized how little time I had to prepare for this meeting. I slipped out of the house quietly, making sure to avoid any creaky floorboards that might give me away. The evening air was crisp as I walked to the park where we had shared so many stolen moments. Each step felt like a step deeper into a world that was no longer mine alone. When I arrived, Alex was already waiting by his car, leaning against it with an expression that mixed concern and anticipation. "I'm glad you came," he said softly, his voice low enough to keep our conversation private from prying eyes. "I wasn't sure if I should," I admitted, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me. We spent the next few hours driving through quiet streets, sharing stories about our lives, hopes and dreams that felt distant yet so close in that moment. The connection between us deepened with every word exchanged. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. "Do you ever think about what could be?" he asked suddenly, glancing at me with those piercing eyes that seemed to see right through my facade. "All the time," I confessed, knowing full well how dangerous this conversation was becoming. As we drove under a sky adorned with stars, we pulled over into a secluded spot near the river. The silence enveloped us like a warm blanket as we stepped out of the car. It felt surreal being there together. It was as if time had stopped just for us. And then it happened, our lips met in a soft kiss under the vast night sky. It felt like an escape from reality, a moment where nothing else mattered except us. But just as quickly as it began, guilt washed over me like a cold wave crashing against warm sand. "I shouldn't be doing this," I murmured against his lips, pulling away slightly while trying to catch my breath. "You deserve happiness," he replied earnestly, his hands gently cradling my face as if grounding me in this fleeting moment of bliss. But even as those words hung in the air between us, another part of me knew they were laced with danger. This affair was becoming more than just a distraction. It was turning into something real, something that could unravel everything I'd built over years. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. This time it was an alert from my husband's calendar app reminding him about dinner plans we had made weeks ago. My heart sank. He would be home soon. "I have to go," I said abruptly, breaking away from Alex's embrace and heading back toward the car. "Wait," he called after me. Can we talk again soon? I nodded but didn't look back. Fear propelled me forward faster than ever before. As I drove home through empty streets illuminated by streetlights flickering like stars above me, panic started creeping into every corner of my mind. Arriving home felt surreal. Everything looked normal yet strangely foreign. The smell of dinner wafted through the air, a reminder of what awaited inside, but all I could think about were those stolen moments with Alex and how they threatened to shatter everything around me. As soon as I stepped inside our home, however, reality hit hard. There on our kitchen table lay my phone open with a message displayed prominently. "I found your text." My stomach dropped at seeing those words written in my husband's unmistakable handwriting. He stood there waiting for an explanation, his expression darkened by betrayal and confusion mixed together like storm clouds ready to burst open any minute now. "What is this?" he demanded sharply. "I can explain." My voice trembled despite my effort to sound calm and composed. "Explain what?" "That you've been lying to me?" His eyes blazed with hurt and anger, a mixture that cut deeper than any knife could wound me. With each passing second filled with silence stretching painfully between us like an unbridgeable chasm, realization dawned upon me. There would be no easy way out of this mess I'd created for myself. I stood there, heart racing, as my husband's words echoed in my mind. The weight of his accusation felt like a heavy stone pressing down on my chest. I had never intended for any of this to happen. I had just wanted to feel alive again, to escape the monotony that had settled over our lives like a thick fog. "Where were you last night, Sarah?" he demanded, his voice low but firm. The tension in the room was palpable, and I could feel my pulse quickening. My mind raced as I searched for an answer that wouldn't betray the truth. "I was out with friends," I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. It was a feeble excuse, and I knew it wouldn't hold up under scrutiny. His eyes narrowed, and I could see the doubt etched across his face. "Friends? You didn't even mention any plans." He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe as if bracing himself for whatever came next. "I didn't think it was important," I replied, trying to sound casual. But inside, my heart sank further into despair. Each moment felt like a countdown to disaster. Just then, my phone buzzed on the counter, an incoming message from Alex. Panic surged through me as I glanced at it. What would he say? Would he sense the turmoil brewing at home? My husband noticed my hesitation and stepped closer. "Who is it?" he asked sharply. "It's just work," I lied again, feeling trapped in a web of deceit that was tightening around me with every passing second. As we stood there in silence, Alex texted again, "Thinking of you." The word sent a thrill through me but also deepened my guilt. How could I be so selfish? "I need some air," I finally blurted out, desperate to escape the suffocating atmosphere of our home. My husband watched me leave without saying another word. Outside, the crisp evening air hit me like a refreshing wave. I took deep breaths as I walked toward the small park nearby, the place where Alex and I had shared laughter and stolen moments under the stars. It felt like an eternity since I'd allowed myself to feel anything other than dread about my choices. Arriving at the park bench where we often met, I saw Alex waiting for me under a canopy of trees swaying gently in the breeze. His face lit up at the sight of me, but soon faded when he noticed my distress. "What happened?" he asked softly, concern etched across his features. It's complicated." My voice trembled as I tried to explain without revealing too much about my husband's suspicions. "Talk to me," Alex urged gently, stepping closer as if to shield me from everything else around us. I took a deep breath and decided to confide in him just enough to ease my burden without exposing everything that had transpired at home. He found a text on my phone. Alex's expression hardened slightly before he softened again. "You know you can trust me." "I know," I whispered back, feeling torn between two worlds, one filled with warmth and connection with him and another weighed down by obligation and regret with my husband. As we talked about our fears and dreams under the moonlight, something shifted within me. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Yet amidst our conversation came an unexpected twist. Alex leaned in closer and whispered softly into my ear, "I can't keep being your secret." His words struck a chord deep within me. They echoed everything I'd been trying to avoid facing all along, the reality that this double life was unsustainable and unfair to both men involved. "I don't want to lose you," I admitted quietly but firmly. "You won't lose me if you choose this path," he replied earnestly. "But you have to decide what you really want." My heart raced at his assertion. It felt like standing at a crossroads where one path led back into darkness while another promised light but came with its own risks. Just then, reality crashed back down around us when we heard footsteps approaching quickly from behind us. A familiar voice calling out made both our hearts drop simultaneously. "Sarah." It was my husband's voice cutting through the night air like a knife. Panic surged through me as Alex glanced around nervously before taking a step back into the shadows of the trees behind us. My instinct screamed for him to leave before things escalated further, yet part of me wanted desperately for him not to go, to stand by me against this storm brewing on the horizon. "Why are you here?" I asked sharply as my husband approached us with determination written all over his face. "I came looking for you," he replied coolly but with an undercurrent of anger simmering just beneath his calm exterior. As he stepped closer still, his eyes searching mine for answers, I realized there would be no avoiding this confrontation any longer. The truth hung heavily between us like an impending storm ready to break loose at any moment. Before either of us could speak again or react further, Alex slipped away silently into the night without another word, leaving only confusion swirling around us both like fallen leaves caught in an autumn windstorm. And there stood my husband, a man who deserved honesty, and yet here I was caught in a web of lies, unable or unwilling to untangle myself from it all. I stared at the empty space where Alex had just been, my heart racing. The sudden silence felt deafening, amplifying the weight of my choices. I could still feel the warmth of his presence lingering in the air. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to reality. It was a message from my husband, asking if I would be home soon. Just finishing up, I typed back, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was living a double life, and with each passing moment, it became harder to maintain the facade. The thought of facing my husband after what had just happened filled me with dread. I hurried home, my mind racing with thoughts of Alex and our stolen moments together. As I entered the house, I found my husband sitting at the kitchen table, his brow furrowed in concern. "Where were you?" he asked, his voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of suspicion. "I was just out for a walk," I replied too quickly, avoiding his gaze. He didn't seem convinced but chose not to press further. Instead, he turned back to his laptop, leaving me feeling more isolated than ever. The next few days passed in a blur of guilt and longing. Every time I heard a car pull into the driveway, my heart would leap in hope that it was Alex. But each time it was only my husband returning from work late again. The emotional chasm between us widened as he focused on his job while I tried to navigate this tangled web of feelings. Then came Saturday, the day of our family gathering that I had almost forgotten about amidst the chaos of my emotions. My husband had planned everything meticulously. It was supposed to be a celebration for our anniversary. Instead, it felt like a reminder of everything that was missing in our lives. As we prepared for the gathering, an idea struck me: what if I could see Alex just one more time before facing my family? A quick call wouldn't hurt, after all. We needed closure after what had happened between us. I sent him a text, "Can we meet?" Just for a moment. My heart raced as I hit send, and within minutes came his reply, "Where?" I suggested a small cafe nearby where we could talk without drawing attention. He agreed almost instantly, It felt like fate was pushing us together one last time. When I arrived at the cafe later that evening, nerves twisted in my stomach like a tight knot. As soon as Alex walked in, all those feelings came rushing back. His smile ignited something deep within me that had long been dormant. "Sarah," he said softly as he approached our table. "I wasn't sure if you'd come." "I needed to see you," I confessed, trying to ignore the fluttering panic inside me. We talked about everything and nothing all at once, our dreams and regrets intertwined like threads in a tapestry. But then he leaned closer and whispered, "What if we just left? You and me." His words hung heavy in the air between us, a tempting escape from reality that both thrilled and terrified me. Before I could respond or even think clearly about what that meant for us both, he reached out and took my hand, the warmth of his touch sending shivers down my spine. In that moment, everything else faded away, all that mattered was us. We spent hours lost in conversation until reality crashed back into focus when Alex glanced at his watch with alarm. "You have to go," he urged gently but firmly. "I know," I replied reluctantly as dread settled over me again like an unwelcome fog. As we stood outside beneath dim streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement, he pulled me closer for one last embrace, a bittersweet farewell tinged with longing before releasing me back into my life. But when I returned home later that night after missing our family event entirely, my husband's disappointment palpable, I found him waiting for me with an expression that twisted something deep inside me, anger mixed with hurt reflected clearly on his face. "Where have you been?" he demanded sharply as soon as I crossed the threshold into our home, a space now heavy with unspoken accusations. "I told you already. Just out." My voice rose defensively against his scrutiny despite knowing full well how hollow those words sounded now. He stepped closer. Tension crackled like electricity between us as frustration boiled over into something deeper than anger. A desperate need for honesty overshadowed by fear held tightly within both our hearts. "Don't lie to me," he shouted suddenly. Raw emotion broke through every barrier built over years spent together. Years filled with love but also neglect hidden beneath layers of routine existence slowly suffocating every spark remaining between us both until nothing remained except resentment festering beneath fragile surfaces cracked open wide by betrayal's sharp edge cutting through everything familiar around us now threatening collapse entirely. And just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, my phone buzzed again this time revealing another message from Alex. "We need to talk." I stood frozen, my husband's words echoing in the air, heavy and suffocating. The message from Alex felt like a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. I glanced at my husband, who was still fuming, his face flushed with anger. I could feel the walls closing in around me, the weight of my choices pressing down like a vice. "Where were you last night?" he demanded again, his voice low but sharp. "You didn't answer my calls." "I was at the grocery store," I lied, trying to keep my voice steady. I lost track of time. The lie felt bitter on my tongue, but what else could I say? I had spent the night with Alex, and now that secret loomed over us like a dark cloud. He shook his head in disbelief. "You expect me to believe that? You never lose track of time." His eyes narrowed as he studied me. I could see the hurt etched on his face, a mixture of confusion and betrayal that twisted my stomach into knots. "I'm sorry," I whispered, trying to sound sincere. Just what?" he interrupted sharply. "What's going on with you? You've been distant for weeks." His words cut deeper than any knife. I wanted to explain everything, the loneliness, the connection with Alex, but how could I? My heart raced as I thought about Alex waiting for me to respond. What if this was it? What if everything unraveled before I had a chance to make sense of it all? "I just need some space," I finally managed to say. It felt like a feeble excuse, but it was all I had left. He turned away from me, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Space? That's what you think you need?" I watched him pace across the living room, feeling trapped between two worlds, one filled with familiarity and obligation and another pulsing with excitement and fear. My phone buzzed again, another message from Alex. "Can we meet tonight?" The tension hung thick in the air as my husband stopped abruptly and faced me again. "I can't keep doing this if you're not going to be honest with me." "I am being honest." The words slipped out before I could stop them. A part of me wanted to scream that I was lost in this mess of emotions and choices. "Then tell me where you were," he pressed, frustration boiling over. "I just told you." But even as I said it, doubt crept into my mind. Would he ever understand? Would he ever forgive? As silence enveloped us once more, an unsettling thought crossed my mind. What if this was the moment everything changed forever? The thought sent chills down my spine. "Fine," he finally said after what felt like hours of silence. "If you want space, take it, but don't expect me to wait around forever." With that ultimatum hanging between us like a guillotine's blade poised for descent, he stormed out of the room. My heart raced as panic set in. This was not how I wanted things to go. Alone in our cluttered living room filled with memories both cherished and painful, I felt utterly lost. I picked up my phone again and stared at Alex's message. "Can we meet tonight?" My hands trembled slightly as I typed back an affirmative response. Meeting him felt both exhilarating and terrifying, a chance for clarity amidst chaos or another step toward destruction. As evening approached and shadows stretched across our home, dread seeped into every corner of my mind. What would happen when Alex found out about my husband's confrontation? Would he still want to see me? The clock ticked loudly as I paced back and forth until finally deciding on something bold. After all these weeks of hiding and lying, it was time for honesty even if it meant facing consequences head-on. Just then, an unexpected sound broke through the tension, a key turning in the lock followed by the familiar creak of our front door opening wide. My heart sank further. It was too soon for him to be back home. "Sarah?" My husband called out softly from the hallway, his tone no longer angry but filled with something more vulnerable now, fear perhaps or realization that something significant had shifted between us both beyond repair. "Yeah?" My voice came out barely above a whisper as anxiety coursed through every fiber of my being. He stepped inside cautiously. There was no anger left now, only an overwhelming sadness reflected in his eyes that pierced through layers built over years spent together. Years filled mostly with silence rather than conversation, revealing truths hidden beneath fragile surfaces cracked open wide by betrayal's sharp edge cutting through everything familiar around us, now threatening collapse entirely. "I found your suitcase," he said, finally breaking our shared silence while holding it tightly against himself, almost like a shield protecting him from whatever storm lay ahead between us both, now unraveling slowly before our very eyes. In that moment, a single thought flashed through my mind. Was this truly how it would end? Before we could even begin to understand what had transpired between us, both so completely unprepared for what lay ahead. "I found your suitcase," he said, finally breaking our shared silence while holding it tightly against himself, almost like a shield protecting him from whatever storm lay ahead between us both, now unraveling slowly before our very eyes. I stood frozen, my heart racing as I searched his expression for any hint of understanding or compassion. "It's not what you think," I managed to whisper, feeling my voice tremble. But deep down, I knew the truth was far more complicated than that. He took a step back, the suitcase still clutched in his hands. "Then what is it? Why would you need to pack?" His voice was steady, but I could hear the hurt beneath the surface. I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me like a heavy fog. "I just needed some time to think," I replied weakly, wishing I could take back every moment that had led us here. Yet, the reality of my feelings for Alex loomed over me like a dark cloud. My husband's eyes narrowed as he processed my words, searching for clarity in the chaos. "Time to think? Or time to run away?" he shot back, anger flaring in his tone. I flinched at his accusation but remained silent, knowing that any defense would sound hollow given the circumstances. Suddenly, the door creaked open behind him and Alex stepped into view, confusion etched on his face as he glanced between us. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously, sensing the tension in the air. My heart sank as I realized that Alex's presence only complicated an already fraught situation. "Just a misunderstanding," I said quickly, hoping to defuse the moment before it escalated further. But my husband shook his head slowly, disbelief clouding his features. "A misunderstanding? Sarah, this isn't just about a suitcase anymore." He pointed toward Alex with an intensity that sent chills down my spine. "Let's talk about this," Alex suggested gently, but I could see how uncomfortable he felt being caught in our private storm. "No." My husband interrupted sharply. "You don't get to be part of this conversation." The finality in his voice left no room for argument. I felt trapped between two worlds, one filled with regret and another pulsing with unfulfilled desires. My heart raced as I weighed my options, each choice seemed more perilous than the last. "Please," I pleaded softly, desperate for understanding from both men in my life. "I never meant for this to happen." But even as those words left my lips, I knew they felt inadequate against the backdrop of betrayal and confusion swirling around us. "Then what did you mean?" My husband's voice cracked slightly as he pressed me for answers. The vulnerability in his tone tugged at something deep within me, a flicker of love buried beneath layers of disappointment. "I wanted to feel alive again," I admitted finally, feeling raw and exposed under their scrutiny. "I've been lonely," and then Alex came along. The admission hung heavily in the air like an uninvited guest crashing a party. Alex shifted uncomfortably beside me, clearly torn between wanting to comfort me and respecting my husband's feelings. "Sarah," he started but faltered when he noticed how tense everything had become. "It doesn't matter now," my husband interjected bitterly as if dismissing any chance for reconciliation altogether. As silence enveloped us again, thick and suffocating, I realized that this moment would define everything moving forward. My heart sank further when Alex turned toward me with an expression of concern mixed with longing. It was evident that we both craved something more than what we had right now. "I care about you," he said quietly but firmly enough that it resonated deep within me, a stark contrast to where we stood just moments before. Before I could respond or process those words fully, my husband stepped forward again with renewed determination etched across his face. "I can't do this anymore." His declaration shattered whatever fragile hope lingered in the room like glass splintering into sharp fragments scattered across cold tile floors. "What do you mean?" I asked breathlessly. Fear coursed through me like ice water as realization dawned upon us all too late. His resolve was absolute. "I'm leaving," he stated simply yet powerfully, turning away from us both without another glance back, a decision made without any room for negotiation or understanding. As he walked out into the night air filled with distant sounds of city life continuing on without us, I felt an emptiness settle into place where love once thrived, a void carved deeper by choices made under duress rather than clarity or connection. Turning slowly toward Alex again, the gravity of our situation pressed heavily upon us both. I knew things would never be quite right again no matter how much we wanted them to be so simple once more. The weight of the moment hung in the air as I stood there, Alex's gaze searching mine for answers we both feared to confront. My heart raced, caught between the thrill of our connection and the reality of my life unraveling. "What do we do now?" I whispered, unsure if I wanted to know. Alex took a step closer, his voice low and steady. "We need to figure this out, Sarah. I can't keep hiding." His words echoed my own fears. I had been living in a world of secrets, and now it felt like those walls were closing in around me. As we spoke, my mind drifted to my husband and the plans he had made for us, a family trip that now felt like a cruel joke. The thought twisted like a knife in my gut, reminding me of the life I was slowly losing grip on. "He's planning a trip next week," I said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Alex frowned, his expression darkening. "What will you do? You can't just keep pretending." His concern was genuine, but it only intensified my anxiety. How could I explain this tangled mess without hurting everyone involved? Later that evening, as I tried to prepare dinner, the mundane tasks felt insurmountable. Chopping vegetables became an exercise in frustration. My hands trembled with each slice as thoughts of Alex and my husband swirled chaotically in my mind. The phone buzzed on the counter, another message from Alex asking if we could talk again soon. My heart sank at the thought of meeting him while knowing what was waiting at home. The next morning brought with it an unexpected tension when my husband announced his plans for our trip, an elaborate itinerary filled with activities meant to bring us closer together. "I thought we could really use this time," he said over breakfast, oblivious to the turmoil brewing within me. "Sounds great," I managed to reply, forcing a smile while feeling every fiber of my being scream against it. The irony was suffocating. He believed he was rekindling our love while I was spiraling deeper into another world entirely. As the day wore on, I overheard him speaking on the phone with friends about our upcoming trip, how excited everyone seemed for us. It made me feel trapped. They had no idea about the fractures beneath our surface. My hands shook as I poured myself a glass of water. Anxiety bubbled within me like an overboiling pot. Later that evening, sitting alone in our living room surrounded by memories that felt more like chains than comfort, I contemplated everything that had happened between Alex and me. My phone vibrated again, a simple text from him, "Can we meet tonight?" The urgency behind his words sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I considered how much longer I could balance this double life before everything collapsed around me. Would Alex understand if I told him about the trip? Would he still want to be part of this chaotic mess? With each passing hour, dread seeped further into my bones as my husband prepared for our journey together, packing bags and making lists while I remained paralyzed by indecision about what lay ahead for all three of us. Just as night fell and shadows crept through our home like whispers of doubt, Alex called again. "Sarah," he said softly when I answered, "I need you to be honest with me." His request struck hard. Honesty had become a luxury neither of us could afford anymore. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," I confessed quietly. "We can't keep going back and forth," he replied firmly but gently, a reminder that choices had consequences beyond just feelings or desires. In that moment, clarity washed over me like cold water. It was time to confront not only Alex but also myself, and ultimately face what would happen when truth collided with reality. As if sensing my resolve falter again under pressure from both sides, my husband's innocent expectations versus Alex's urgent desire, I heard footsteps approaching down the hall followed by an unexpected knock at our door. My heart raced anew as uncertainty loomed large once more. Whoever stood outside would change everything yet again, and there would be no turning back from whatever awaited me on the other side. I opened the door slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. Standing there was a delivery man, holding a large box. "Package for you, ma'am," he said with a smile, oblivious to the turmoil inside me. "Thank you," I replied, taking the box and closing the door behind me. I placed it on the kitchen table, feeling its weight as if it carried all my unresolved emotions. My mind raced back to Alex's proposal about taking that trip together. What would it mean? Could I really leave everything behind? As I unwrapped the box, I found it filled with items from a recent family vacation, pictures, souvenirs, and memories that felt like chains binding me to my past. My husband had always wanted us to create lasting memories together. I could almost hear his laughter echoing through our home as I sifted through the contents. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from Alex. "Can we talk? I need to see you." A wave of guilt washed over me as I contemplated my next move. My heart longed for his presence but weighed heavily with the reality of my situation. "Not now," I murmured to myself, silencing the phone and pushing it away. Just then, my husband entered the room, his face lighting up at the sight of the package. "What did you get?" he asked, genuinely curious. "Just some things from that trip last year," I replied, forcing a smile while trying to mask my inner conflict. He picked up a small trinket, a keychain shaped like our hometown, and chuckled softly. "It's nice we can hold on to these moments." His words struck deep within me. They reminded me of what was at stake. I felt trapped between two worlds, one filled with memories and expectations and another bursting with desire and uncertainty. The tension in my chest tightened as I realized how much longer I could maintain this facade without breaking down entirely. After dinner that night, while washing dishes, I found myself lost in thought again about Alex's message. The water ran over my hands as if trying to wash away all the confusion swirling in my mind. My husband's footsteps echoed behind me as he leaned against the counter. "You seem distant lately," he observed quietly. "Is everything okay?" I paused for a moment before responding, "Just tired from work." The lie felt heavy on my tongue but was necessary to keep him from probing further. Later that evening, after putting away leftovers and cleaning up, I retreated to our bedroom feeling more isolated than ever. The weight of my choices pressed down on me like an anchor pulling me beneath waves of doubt and fear. I glanced at the clock. It was late enough for Alex to be awake but too late for practical conversations about our future together, if there even was one anymore. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, another message from Alex, "Please don't shut me out." This time, something inside snapped. Perhaps it was desperation or clarity, I couldn't tell which, but I knew what needed to be done. I grabbed my coat and headed toward the door when another knock echoed through our quiet home once more. Heart racing anew at this interruption of resolve, I opened it without thinking twice. Standing there was Alex himself, his expression serious yet vulnerable under dim porch light spilling into our entryway. "We need to talk," he said firmly yet gently. "What are you doing here?" I whispered urgently while glancing back into our house where shadows danced behind closed doors. "I couldn't wait any longer," he replied earnestly, stepping closer into view. His presence ignited something deep within me that had been dormant for too long. "I can't do this right now," I stammered nervously, glancing back again towards safety, a sanctuary now feeling more like a prison than ever before. "But we have to figure this out," he insisted softly but firmly, his eyes searching mine for answers only we could provide each other amidst chaos swirling around us both. Before anything else could be said or done, the sound of footsteps approaching broke through our momentary bubble of connection once again, footsteps unmistakably belonging to my husband who had just returned unexpectedly from an errand late into the night. In that instant, a realization hit harder than any storm outside: the truth would come crashing down upon us all in mere moments.